I want to go back to something that you said in just a minute, but there's another vehicle that is presented for us recently, some of the realities of the wrestling world, and it's ironically a piece of fiction. It's The Wrestler, the movie, that was hugely popular. Obviously, everybody knows it. Most people have seen it by now. Mickey Rourke was celebrated for his performance of The Wrestler. Have you measured at all the impact of the pain and the realism in that particular portrayal of that world, how that have either affected the industry or the perception of the world of wrestlers by fans?
Well, I don't know if it's affected the industry. It was an excellent film. I've got to say that. I mean, it really nailed a certain small-time independent underbelly of the wrestling industry, largely populated not just by up-and-comers, but by down-and-outers who were at one time stars and can't let go of the dream. I thought it was a brilliant piece of filmmaking by Darren Aronofsky and a brilliant performance, of course, by Mickey Rourke. But I don't think it changed anything any more than the real-life tragedy of Benoit changed anything. Interesting thing about The Wrestlers, two things. One is there's a guy who plays a drug dealer in that movie who's a real drug dealer. And he was stupid enough to play a drug dealer in a movie while the Drug Enforcement Administration was closing in on him, and he's behind bars right now. The other thing is there was a wrestler who has a bit role in it, an independent wrestler named Paul Fuchs, I believe is his name. He wrestled under the name Paul Enormous, and he dropped dead shortly after the movie came out. So again, the mind-bending convergence of reality and fantasy in this world is just extraordinary.
So let's talk a little bit more about this incredible blurring of fiction and fact that I cannot imagine or think of any other part of our world or experience that does this the way that wrestling does. How do you believe it affects our perception of reality when it comes to the rest of mainstream society?
Well, I'm going to have to gently dissent from the premise of that question because I approach it from a different direction, which is that wrestling is like the rest of the world, only more so. And I think that jocks and glory seekers and and others in our society who will do anything to, as they say in show business, get over, take tremendous risks. In legitimate sports, we see it with performance-enhancing drugs that have a real, it's a real a public health problem that isn't addressed, as people just talk about records and whether a guy belongs in the Hall of Fame and things like that. So I think that where it comes from is the tremendously commercialized world that we live in, with so many more opportunities through media and other means to become a star, not just a movie star, but you can become an internet star, or you can there's a lot of narrowcasting right now, and there are a lot of people who have dreams and the means to pursue them, and it's out of control. But that's kind of the crazy late empire culture that we have right now.
I read that you trace the roots of wrestling to a 19th century carnival tent. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's not me. I wouldn't take credit for that piece of scholarship. I think it's pretty widely accepted that wrestling began in carnivals. There would be strongman exhibitions, and the carnival would say, "Is anybody in the audience want to challenge this guy? If you can last 5 minutes with him, you win $50 or whatever." And by and by, there'd be a guy who was tougher than the carnival tough guy. So he'd whisper to him, "I'll split the money with you if you let me beat you. We'll put on a good show." And one thing leads to another, and pretty soon they figure out that they can put a couple of guys in an arena and draw a lot of people. And then television came along, and then cable television came along. So there is a through line through all of this stuff, and wrestling to this day has a carnival language that is less private than it used to be, because I think a lot of fans know a lot of these terms like kayfabe and shoot and work and so forth. So it's indisputably a carny offshoot.
Well, I bring that up because You know, it's interesting. I really appreciate the way that you came at that question that I asked you about how the blurring of fiction and reality affects our perception of reality. And you bring it back to how, in so many ways, wrestling reflects what we're doing in society. Do you see that, you know, from the origins of wrestling, from that 19th century carnival tent to where it is today, that it really follows, in terms of its growth, a lot of things that had happened in our society at the same time?
Well, that's a tougher one, but I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, mostly wrestling, I think, tracks technology changes and media changes. For example, when television started, it was just a cheap and easy form of programming, and they didn't have as developed a sense of camp as we have now, of knowing that, you know, it's funny because it's not real, but the people take it seriously, and it is sort of real because they're competing in a way, even if they're not competing in a pure athletic sense, they're competing for fan support and popularity and ticket sales. So I think that what really drives change in wrestling is the delivery system. So you had the carnival tents, you had the arenas, you had the television exposure, and now the cable television exposure and pay-per-view, which has completely changed the revenue base of wrestling. So it's no longer about house shows in individual towns so much as building up to that big show where people are going to fork out a lot of money once a month or so. So that's kind of my approach to analyzing the wrestling industry. Culturally, it's a fascinating thing, and if you look at old movies that dealt with wrestling earlier than The Wrestler, going way back to 1950, there was a terrific noir classic movie called Night in the City about the pro wrestling scene in London. You can see that people were a little closer to understanding, or I shouldn't say they were closer to understanding what's real and what's not real about it, but it was a little more grounded in I guess what we would call gritty reality.